board and their leadership. We elected 3 co-chairs because, you know why? Nobody wanted the job. Nobody wanted the job of leading this community alone against 3 levels of government. And we were largely a non-English speaking Chinese community. So we had to work across language barriers, and all of our meetings used to happen in English and Cantonese. Everything took twice as long, of course. And we elected the 3 co-chairs. Sue Lum, who had been a wonderful connection, and she knew what was going on at City Hall. And she used to come and inform my mom, who would then go out and organize and knock on doors. Walter Chan, my dad, who had the power of the pen. Harry Kahn, with his political savvy and his connections, and together they helped to lead this organization and its board to a successful conclusion. Now, it's wonderful today to have so many of the founders and supporters of SPOTA here today. People who were instrumental in the organizing and the success of SPOTA, not all of whom are named in the MOSAIC, but all the founding members are, and the founding supporters, but all who deserve recognition for what they did on the front lines or behind the scenes. People who worked tirelessly, first to stop urban renewal, then to rebuild the community through negotiating and implementing the rehabilitation programs. I especially just want to touch briefly on the fact that the people who made such a difference were Darlene Marzari, who was the first one to hear what the people were really saying and not just telling us what we ought to be doing. Margaret Mitchell, who was the organizer of Neighborhood Services, who then found us Jonathan Lau, who was a bilingual organizer. Maurice Egan, who was a senior public servant who quietly worked behind the scenes at City Hall on our behalf. Jonathan Lau, of course, who was our incredible organizer, supporter. Joe Wei, who was a real Chinatown advocate, but who also was an architect who helped us design our community. Hayne Wei, who was executive director of SPOTA. And then the residents, of course, who worked passionately to save this neighborhood. Bessie Lee, backbone of SPOTA, we call her. Although she's small and tiny and cute and adorable. Susie Eng, of course. Joanne Lee, her daughter, who university educated and now a doctorate, of course. Nora McGarry, who was Nora Curry. Tom Messick, Jay Lee, who's over here. Yeah, he was our Chinese secretary. And Susie Jung, Pat Canning. And, you know, there were people who came later, people like my brother, Larry Chan, who was very much, who created the Strathcona renovation project, where he taught local residents how to renovate the homes, and they got involved in, you know, really changing and renovating affordably the houses for the people once they got the grants. Mike Harcourt, who sends his regrets and his affection, but he couldn't come today, he's not in town. And of course Diane Spearing, who's here for her husband Dave Spearing, who's an architect. Okay, I know I'm getting going. No. Okay.
It's your show.
Yep. Okay, it's my show. All right, you guys gotta have to put up with this. And of course the politicians who really actively supported us. You know, there were the team council members who led the freeway fight. That was Walter Hardwick and Art Phillips and a lot of the team members. And later came May Brown and Marguerite Ford, both of whom were staunch supporters of a better city and better planning for the city and consultation with communities. And at the time, the 2 NPA aldermen who voted with the team members, Marianne Linnell and Brian Calder. And then there was the Cope councillor, Harry Rankin, who did, when I first went to ask him about whether he could help us, unfortunately told me that the decision had already been made and it was too late to do anything about it. But I was too naive to take no for an answer. So federal politicians were Ron Bassford, who was our local MP, and the Honourable Paul Hellyer, you heard about, but the man who made a real difference was the Honourable Robert Andras, Minister of Urban Affairs. He was the one that finally said to the city, no, don't bring me plans for freeways and urban renewal. unless the community supports it. And if they don't support it, I'm not going to approve funding for it. So since the federal government put in 50 cents for every dollar in the urban renewal and transportation programs, he got heard. And that's how we ended up sitting down at a table together, SPOTA and 3 levels of government. MLAs Evan Wolf, Herb Kaposi, who were our MLAs at the time, and then came Gary Locke and Emery Barnes when the NDP government took over from the social credit. I do have a regret, and that is that this day comes too late for some of our members, like Dave Spearing or Mr. Ma, my mother, Mary, my father, Walter. They would have been absolutely tickled to know that their courage, their sense of social justice, and leadership action led to preserving a heritage community for the people who live in it today, changing government decision-making processes right across the country, and stopping a freeway so that Vancouver is known as one of the North America's most livable cities. I am sure that they're here with us and share in our delight in having this mosaic by Strathcona artists Richard Tetreault and Jerry Whitehead, and you'll hear from them later, which celebrates their courage to fight injustice and to fight for community preservation. And I know my parents would be so proud of the Vancouver Heritage Plaques, which will mark their home as a place in Vancouver that matters. So thank you, everyone, again for standing through this downpour and for coming out, for the recognition that you've given us, Esther, Richard, Wendy Au, and all those who've made this possible, Jessica, for this recognition from the bottom of my heart.